up, Guardians? Today we're diving into the wonderful world of Warlocks, exploring the top 7 builds that will empower you to conquer every PvE challenge the game throws your way. As Warlocks, we aim to take full advantage of Destiny's powerful space magic. With these meticulously crafted builds, you'll harness the full extent of your powers to overcome any obstacle, from unleashing devastating abilities upon legions of enemies to providing invaluable support to your fire team. These builds are tailored to excel in every PvE scenario Destiny 2 has to offer. So whether you're delving into dungeons, confronting powerful bosses, or embarking on exotic quests, these builds will help guide you through the darkness with unwavering confidence. Prepare to master Destiny's space magic, rally your fellow Guardians, and join us as we unveil the top 7 Warlock builds designed to dominate PvE content in Destiny 2. Remember to leave a like if you find this video helpful, and if you like seeing build videos and other Destiny 2 helpful content, consider hitting that subscribe button. With that being said, let's jump right on into it. The first build on our list is one of the most solid, straightforward, and easy to use Warlock builds out there. You have stability from Restoration, easy grenade spam for ad clear and damage, and one of the strongest supers in the game, not to mention the improved weapon damage from Radiant, and that comes from the Embrace the Sun build, which is a solar Warlock build that uses the Sun Bracers. This build is a staple for many in the community to come back to, and for good reason. So the gameplay loop works like this: kill with your melee and then spam your grenades. That's the main rotation that makes this build so strong, though you can improve upon it further by using heat rises to your advantage. With heat rises, you don't even have to consume your grenade to get the benefit. All you have to do is bunny hop around, and every time you get a kill while you're in the air, you get more melee energy. Since Sunbracers work around getting a melee kill, this is massive in starting up the grenade spam all over again. If you do consume your grenade and activate heat rises, once it's active, if you Phoenix dive, you'll gain restoration ×2. So we'll pair that with Ember of Empyrean, and then we'll quickly get a solar kill to infinitely extend that restoration. And that also works with Ember of Torches, making it so that we gain Radiant on melee hits. So all we have to do is consume our grenade to activate heat rises, and then once it's active, do your Phoenix dive to start that restoration process. Get a kill with a powered melee, and then start spamming those grenades. Now you'll have restoration ×2 and Radiant. And as you're getting kills with those grenades, all you have to do is keep bunny hopping, and you'll immediately get back your melee. It's such an easy cycle to continue once you start it. So how do you improve this build? Well, if you have teammates, this build becomes infinitely stronger with Ember of Benevolence. You can use your Phoenix dive, a powered melee attack, or even a weapon with heal clip near a teammate, and you'll proc this buff. And while this buff is active, you'll gain 400% regeneration rate to your melee, your class ability, and your grenade, which is basically all of your abilities. And this helps a ton in case you ever miss a melee kill. You pair that with Ember of Singeing, so that every time you scorch a target, you're gaining an additional 300% class ability regeneration rate. Now you can spam your Phoenix dive everywhere to continue to proc Restoration and Ember of Benevolence. We'll take mods that focus on getting more super energy and buffing our weapon damage even more to take this build to the next level. When it comes to stats, I like to shoot for 100 resilience, and then I go as high as I can in both recovery and discipline. Most might think to go for strength, but it's not necessary since we get so much melee energy just by jumping whenever we're killing. And we'll be spamming grenades everywhere, so you can either bunny hop or just float around in the air and you'll basically have your melee back by the time your grenades are over. So this build is super powerful, but where does it excel? Well, it excels in all content. Until Well of Radiance gets a big nerf, this build will be relevant. Well of Radiance gives you and your team high DPS for the boss, while Sunbracers gives you amazing ad clear potential. It really does stand out as one of the best builds around. Alright, for our second build, we actually have a Strand build, and this is going to be the Master of Minions build. And this build is for the people that are looking for something new, a way to bring a new spark of joy. We do everything in our power to spawn as many Threadlings as possible. It still stands strong among other builds since Needlestorm does do some of the most damage a super has for Warlock. So you get to have fun, get good ad clearing potential from Threadlings, and do decent boss DPS with your super. So what's the flow for this build? Well, there's no real gameplay loop for this build. Simply create as many Threadlings as possible with your grenade, rift, hatchling weapons, and even from tangles. Swarmers make it so that destroying a tangle will create Threadlings. We pair that with the aspect the Wanderer to have tangles create a suspending burst, not only to give you more control, but allowing you to also bring Thread of Mind, so that you gain more class ability energy by killing suspended targets, and that helps you with your ability cycle. And since we have so many ways to create threadlings, it pairs perfectly with swarmers, which allow threadlings to unravel targets. And unravel is one of my favorite debuffs in the game, since dealing weapon damage to unraveled targets will create seeking threads that will then again deal damage and unravel nearby targets, or even the same target, helping to continue that unravel cycle and deal more damage to everyone in sight. We improve this build even further by bringing Thread of Evolution to power up all of our threadlings to deal even more damage. We then bring armor mods that give back more ability energy, create more orbs, and give more weapon damage to our strand weapons. You can bring weapons with Hatchling to create even more threadlings, or you can bring a weapon like Quicksilver Storm or Wishkeeper for even more class energy. When it comes to stats, I usually like to shoot for 100 resilience, then I'll also take 70 recovery. After that, I pour as much into discipline as possible. I love this build to bring in something new. Destiny can start to feel stale when using the same meta classes over and over and over. I love this class because it offers decent survivability while feeling so different from every other class in the game. With the pure amount of threadlings that you can create, you bring your army to bring the fun back to the game. Alright, moving on to our third build. We have an arc build that uses the Crown of Tempest, called the King of Jolting build. This build fits in well with the main identity of arc builds, that being massive ad clear potential, decent boss DPS, and mainly ability spamming. With this build, we use Crown of Tempest to make it so that basically any kill will give us an increased 500% regeneration rate for our grenade, melee, and super energy, while at the same time, we spawn a ton of Ionic Traces to give back even more ability energy to our grenade, melee, and rift. The gameplay loop goes like this. You can get a kill with your grenade, melee, arc soul from your rift, or a kill with a volt shot weapon to activate Crown of Tempest. Each kill will give you a stack up to 3 stacks, which at max stacks will give you 500% regeneration rate, meaning that basically anything you do will proc Crown of Tempest, making it super easy to spam your abilities. We bring Spark of Ion so that killing jolted targets will create Ionic Trace, meaning that if we somehow run out of our ability energy, we can use our volt shot weapon to re-proc Crown, as well as start the cycle all over again. I love to bring special weapons with Volt Shot so that we can proc Spark of Ions, as well as Spark of Beacons. So that way when we kill with those arc special weapons, they create a blinding explosion, giving you way more survivability. And your Arc Soul will nearly always be supercharged, since collecting an Ionic Trace is going to make us amplified, and we have numerous ways to create Ionic Traces. We then bring armor mods that give back even more ability energy for all of our abilities to make the process even easier. You could alternatively trade out this exotic for Fallen Star, since they'll basically do the same thing, but the main difference between the two is that this build offers more super energy, and Fallen Star offers more rift energy and a little bit of energy for your teammates. So pick whichever one fits your playstyle better. When it comes to stats, I like to shoot for 100 resilience and discipline. Then I go for roughly 70 recovery and 40 to 50 in both intellect and strength. It doesn't have to be that exact, but I find that to be the sweet spot for most of this. Any activity that has an arc surge is an excellent place to use this build. It's decent in all forms of content. There might be better builds in specific scenarios, though this build brings a constant benefit to you, being able to clear out ads and spam your abilities, dealing more damage and getting pretty decent boss DPS. Warlock has one of the most unique exotic combinations possible, and it's actually very strong, and we take advantage of that in this build with a strand build that uses the necrotic grips called the peak poison build. With necrotic grips, we can spread poison damage to nearby targets with a few select weapons. Not only does this give you excellent ad clearing potential, but as mentioned before, Needlestorm is one of the strongest one and done supers Warlocks have. So the gameplay loop works like this. Consume your shackle grenade to activate Weaver's Trance, which makes getting any kill create a suspending burst. With weapons like Osteo, Thorn, or Necrochasm, we can poison targets, which will create both a suspending burst and a poisoning burst whenever it kills a target, which will continue to suspend and kill any targets close by. In theory, this can continue forever if enemies just keep coming. Some of those tougher targets you will have to hit a few more times, but like I said, they'll be suspended, so it'll be easy to take them out. We then use fragments like Thread of Mind, Wisdom, and Generation to gain more class ability energy, create orbs, and generate more grenade energy just by damaging or killing a target. This build becomes even stronger when we bring Thread of Warding to consistently have Woven Mail, giving us an extra 45% damage resistance to all sources. You'll also be using an exotic primary, meaning you'll drop more heavy ammo for you and your team. So we'll bring armor mods that that create orbs, create ability energy, and improve our stats as well as weapon damage. When it comes to stats, I mainly focus on getting to 100 resilience and discipline, and then pour the rest into as much recovery as possible. That way we have high survivability, a fairly high uptime on our grenade, and a fairly high uptime on our rift. So where does this build excel? Well, this build is a top tier build. It does good boss DPS since you can poison and let that do damage while you switch to your other weapons. It has amazing ad clearing potential since you can not only control the room, but also poison the room, wiping out waves of enemies. And this is the only build in the game that focuses on using poison as the main ingredient. And for our next build, this build is so strong, it's very close to being a GM level build. It definitely can be used in a GM by the right person. However, it is a stasis build, and stasis is a little bit weaker than other classes right now. Though I would argue with this freezing turrets build, this is one of the strongest, if not the strongest stasis subclass build in the game. We're bringing stasis and using the osmiomancy gloves to have 2 grenades, and because of that, we can spawn so many turrets that we get the ability to freeze nearly all targets in sight, which helps intrinsically to stun overload and unstoppable champions, which is why it's so strong for GMs. So what is the gameplay loop for this build? Well, it goes like this. Hold down your grenade button for a bit and then release it to create a turret on impact that will continue to fire slowing projectiles at enemies and eventually freeze them. We then use Whisper of Shards and Refraction to gain increased grenade regeneration and gain back class ability energy whenever we're defeating those frozen targets. Since our turrets will continue to freeze everything, this is a constant benefit, meaning you should be getting back your grenade and your rift very often. Osmiomancy gloves fit perfectly since we can bring a cold snap grenade and have access to 2 grenades, meaning 2 turrets at any moment's notice, as well as even more grenade ability energy. The amount of slowing and freezing that will be happening makes it easier to deal with tough targets like champions and even deal more damage to bosses. We improve this build by bringing weapons that synergize with it. We have 2 options, the first being Wicked Implement, which can add even more slowing and freezing and crystal generation for perfect synergy. Or the other option is to bring a double special loadout with a stasis trace rifle like the Aegir Scepter or a Pentance as your primary weapon to deal massive damage with good synergy. We then bring mods that boost our weapon damage and give back more ability energy and even create orbs. When it comes to stats, I usually like to focus on getting 100 in resilience, recovery, and discipline. With the fragments that we're choosing, we're getting a bunch of stat bonuses along with it, making it a little bit easier to get triple 100s. But if you can't get to that triple 100, get as much resilience and discipline as possible, and then have recovery as high as possible as well. This build offers massive ad control and ad clearing potential. With the ability to stun 2 types of champions with our turrets alone, this build excels at handling any activity that has champions. You can bring it solo or with a team. This build is very strong when it comes to a stasis build. Our next build is one of the best void builds, and that's our soulbound build. It uses Briar Binds to take full advantage of our void soul. Void classes tend to be some of the best subclasses when it comes to supporting your team, and this build does not disappoint. We have constant access to Weakening and Devour to get more health and deal more damage, plus throw more grenades. We bring Briar Binds so that our void souls will not only last longer, but also deal more damage and even allow you to pick them up and redeploy them to new areas. So what's the flow for this build? Well, we use Feed the Void to gain Devour and increase its benefits from getting any void ability kills. With our void soul dealing increased damage and weakening targets, we can easily throw more and more grenades, which will also end up weakening targets. That allows us to take advantage of Echo of Harvest and Echo of Instability to not only create orbs by killing weakened targets, but also gain volatile rounds whenever we kill with our grenades. Both of these should be continuously procced, since we'll be weakening nearly every target and we'll be throwing our grenades like crazy from Enhanced Devour. So how do we improve this build? Well, we bring a Void Weapon as our primary weapon, paired with Void Weapon Surge mods to deal massive damage and take advantage of volatile rounds. Bringing weapons like Buried Bloodline, Graviton Lance, or even Wave Splitter will massively increase your damage output and pair perfectly with this build. I found that creating orbs was so easy that Wave Splitter would be a massive benefit in this build if you want to run a double special build. We then use mods to increase the ability energy we get back from using our grenades, helping to continue the ability spam and inherently continue the weakening on every target in sight. When it comes to stats, I shoot for as much resilience, discipline, and recovery as possible in that order. I like to get at least 100 in resilience and discipline, and if you can't get to 100 recovery, shoot for 70 and take that font mod. So where does this build excel? Well, this build can be used in solo play. I recommend it for team play since weakening will help out not only you but also your team, so you can bring this into any activity that has a void surge. You get so much health back from Enhanced Devour that you can use it solo if you want, but it really does excel in a team environment. And for our final build, we're taking a GM build, and that's going to be a solar build build with either Phoenix Protocol or Mantle of Battle Harmony. We recently put out a top 700 builds video where we mentioned a GM build that pairs perfectly with this next build. Grandmaster Nightfalls become a breeze when you have the ability to chain supers. Having a teammate with Orpheus Rigs means that you have a constant source of weakening and allows you to chain your well with their tether. This build can be run one of two ways. First, you can use the more popular option, which is Phoenix Protocol, to gain back up to 50% of your super by getting kills or assists from you and your team while you're in your well. Alternatively, you can bring Mantle of Battle Harmony, where kills with solar weapons grant 3% super energy every 2 seconds while your super isn't charged. And while it is charged, instead you'll get 4 stacks of solar weapon surge. I do like this option a little bit better since you'll get your super back so often that you'll intrinsically get more weapon damage more often as well. Both options will work, it's mainly just a personal preference thing. Since you'll have your well up basically constantly, you'll pretty much always have a source of healing and extra weapon damage as well. We bring fusion grenades that use Touch of Flame to explode twice, and Celestial Fire to deal massive damage even at range. Since this is for a GM, then we pair that with Ember of Benevolence so that we can use our melee, a heal clip weapon, Rift, or our well to proc an extra 400% ability regeneration to be able to spam our grenades and melee more often. I personally like to use a Rift because I find Rifts more reliable in Grandmasters, but Phoenix Dive is definitely doable since you can get restoration ×2 from it, so use whichever one fits your playstyle. When it comes to improving this build, we bring mods that increase our stats, give more super energy, generate orbs, and increase our weapon damage even further. As I mentioned, heal clip weapons pair perfectly with this build since it can proc Ember of Benevolence, which gives you that extra regeneration rate. I like to shoot for 100 resilience, and then roughly 80 to 90 intellect to help stay alive and spam our well. Any leftover stats can go into discipline, strength, or recovery since all are useful. This build excels as a GM build because of how often you can use your super. Having a well can make it so that you and your team stay alive while being able to clear out rooms of enemies or tougher targets. And if you have teammates that also are running something like Orpheus Rigs or another Phoenix Protocol, it will help you and your teammates get back your supers to continue the cycle over and over again. And there you have it, Guardians. We've covered the top 7 Warlock builds for PvE content in Destiny 2. As Warlocks, our mastery of space magic knows no bounds, and with these meticulously crafted builds, you'll harness the full extent of your powers to overcome any obstacle. Whether you're unleashing devastating abilities upon legions of enemies or providing crucial support to your fire team, these builds have proven their worth in every PvE scenario. Remember, mastering these builds is only the beginning. Experiment with different combinations, tweak your loadouts to suit your playstyle, and never stop honing your skills. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more Destiny 2 content, and share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Keep an eye out for future videos as we continue to explore the ever-evolving world of Destiny 2. Until then, may the threads of fate be ever in your favor. This is Lucky Mech, signing off. See you on the next adventure, Guardians.